Welcome to For the People, by the People, a virtual meetup about blockchain and government, sponsored by the Boston Blockchain Association. I am Nate Rand, board member of the Boston Blockchain Association and moderator for tonight's event. First, a little background on the BBA. Since 2018, the association has been focused on achieving three main goals. The first, to advance blockchain technology both locally and globally. Second, to establish Massachusetts as a global hub of blockchain technology. And third, to support and connect blockchain professionals with useful resources, just like tonight. Today, the BBA network includes over 1,600 individual members and 10 corporations. In those 10 corporations are Algorand, PureStake, Bloomy, Media Shower, Consensus, Cardano, Northern Bank, Clove Crypto, Fabric, and Hedera Hashgraph. We also have two government sponsors, the Boston Federal Reserve and the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative. It's because of these individual members, corporate sponsors, and government members that we are able to put on events like tonight's. For any of you who are not members, we encourage you to join. And for any of you who think your corporations may be interested, please bring them to the table. We'd love to have a conversation. There's a range of packages and benefits that corporations get when they become part of the Boston Blockchain Association. So the agenda for tonight, we are going to get into a panel discussion momentarily. It'll be followed by a question and answer session from the audience. And then finally, we're going to offer breakout rooms, 30 minutes after the Q&A session, where each of our panelists will be able to hold a more informal setting and engage you directly. Links for each one of these breakout sessions will be provided in the chat window later on in the program. Okay, so let's meet our panelists. Pat, would you mind introducing yourself, and then we'll go to Ian and John.
Sure, thank you, Nate. My name's Pat Larkin. I serve as the director of the Innovation Institute at the Mass Tech Collaborative. We're an economic development agency in the state. Our mission is focused on strengthening the competitiveness of the tech and innovation economy in Massachusetts by driving strategic investments, partnerships, and insights that harness the talent of Massachusetts.
Thanks, Pat. Ian?
Sure. Thanks, Nate. Thanks very much. Great to be here tonight. Hello to everyone out there. My name's Ian Cain. I'm a co-founder and executive chairman of QUBIC Labs. We're kind of new on the block. We're a startup incubator located in Quincy, Massachusetts, right in the heart of the burgeoning and redeveloping downtown. And we're focused on identifying, supporting, and investing in entrepreneurs of many different types, but mostly with a focus on a couple of sector verticals. So broadly speaking, Fintech with a particular focus on blockchain, but also government and civic technologies. Obviously, these are areas that themselves are sort of nascent, especially from a technologically development perspective, and we seek to create home for those verticals here. We have an ambitious goal over the next 5 to 10 years of creating jobs. We, like the Mass Tech Collaborative, are an economic development organization, and we seek to create approximately 1,000 jobs over the next 5 to 10 years. And I look forward to this discussion tonight.
Thanks, Ian. John?
Great, thank you. Thanks, Nate, and thanks everybody for having us join tonight, and particularly the Boston Blockchain Association. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm John Tapper, and I'm the Director of Communications at Votes, V-O-A-T-Z, that is, which is a Boston-based mobile voting app. My background is in journalism, and I believe then, as I believe now, that journalism well done is a public service, and that mission-driven belief has stayed with me throughout my entire career, a career that took me to the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, where I worked as in charge of coverage for the human rights treaty bodies, and including one of those treaty bodies is the Civil and Political Rights Covenant, which guarantees everybody in the world the right to vote. And that stuck with me as a kid from the United States, thinking like everyone in the US is guaranteed a right to vote, but really throughout the world everyone's guaranteed a right to vote too, guaranteed by the UN charters. That laudable goal of expanding access that Votes has for everybody, and the excitement of getting into a company like Votes made the opportunity to join this kind of company much too exciting to pass up. So I'm excited to talk about Votes, the opportunities that Votes is going to increase access for so many people around the world to vote, and how it works within the Boston and Massachusetts governmental structures. So thanks for joining.
Great. Well, it's can't be a better time than now to talk about voting and creating maybe a better platform. So on a personal level, you are all connected to blockchain technology in some way. And we will learn more about that tonight. But given your various roles in government and in support of or in support of core government processes, what motivates you to do what you do at the state and local levels? Why have you chosen to serve the public in the manner that you do? Pat, maybe you could lead us off.
Sure. Thank you, Nate. Yeah, it's interesting. I've made my entire career out in the public sector. So when you get the question after this many years, it gives you an opportunity to pause. You know, at the Innovation Institute, we really are focused on growing industry clusters in the state. And blockchain just represents a fascinating challenge for us around that. We've historically worked in trying to organize the life sciences sector, medical device, clean energy. And these are pretty traditional cluster initiatives. But in our economy today, we're seeing a real convergence around the technologies that make up our digital economy. And blockchain now kind of represents a unique challenge for us from an economic development point of view. How do we approach this sector in a way in which we try to drive growth? We actually worked closely with the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development over the past couple of years, looking at what some of the emerging opportunities are in the state that are going to really drive our future growth. We looked at 7 sectors, everything from quantum computing to robotics into fintech. Blockchain was a key piece of our discovery. We really learned that there's an indigenous strength to blockchain in this state. It's great capabilities in our universities and an ecosystem for entrepreneurship that's second to none. So it's really, it's a great opportunity for us to work with this sector and see what we can do at this very early nascent stage to try to get business decisions, location decisions, startup decisions taking place in this state.
Thank you. Ian.
Sure. Yeah, I think in the introduction, I neglected to say that I also serve on the city council in Quincy. And so I guess partially, I always say that I suffer from a lifelong political affliction, which is why I'm involved in government to begin with. And so I've served on the city council since I was first elected in 2015. So I've been serving since 2016. And I come from the private sector, but have always kind of had an interest in public service. And from my travels through the private equity venture capital worlds focused on energy, telecom, technology, there's always an opportune time to look to government for innovation or to look to innovate government. And I especially noticed that on the local level where I serve in the city council. And so I started developing a thesis around how can we really use local government as a mechanism to innovate, right? To create models where I believe personally, and I think we'll get into this a little bit more, that local government should really take more control because of its ability and proximity to actual citizens and the services that they provide. And so, how can we use local government as a mechanism to improve constituent services, potentially create efficiencies within operations in government, and hopefully save money at the end of the day, which is in part what led me to found QUBIC Labs, where Quincy itself is going through an economic development, sort of downtown rehabilitation and figuring out its identity going forward. And one of those components that I saw missing was that we didn't have a jobs engine. We've got buildings and physical real estate going up, but we don't have sort of future pipeline for the startups that are so, housing themselves in Cambridge and Somerville, and the Seaport was all created around that. So the thesis around government technology and civic technology, building a suite of technology, and technology-enabled services that can aid local government, but then providing a house for that, and identifying that the state was also looking at a couple of corners and pillars, particularly around blockchain, where nobody owns blockchain right now in a certain corner, I've had a personal interest in these areas, and so it just made sense from my juxtaposition between public, private sector, identifying partners that can enable us to create a home that can allow these businesses and entrepreneurs to thrive.
That's great. John.
Sure, Nate, thanks. The public service beyond, that Votes is all about is about access, increasing access to voting for as many people as possible. Particularly right now, we work with the disenfranchised voters, but for as many people as possible. We do everything on our mobile phones. We bank, we pay taxes. My dad has diabetes and he checks his blood glucose levels using an app. People want to vote on their phones. It's evolution. It's truly the next logical step. The Votes Secure app it allows ballots to be marked and returned safely, securely, and secretly, which is the idea behind what we want for all of our ballots. Votes has run more than 70 elections without any problems, many of them in the government sphere. And that allows disenfranchised voters, a 106-year-old woman voter, a blind voter in Utah, soldiers serving overseas, a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa that was serving in a country without a postal service. All of these people cast votes using Votes, and they wouldn't have been able to without our app. So right now there are pilots that focus on these disenfranchised voters, military personnel, overseas citizens, and the disabled in certain jurisdictions throughout Massachusetts, not in Massachusetts, but throughout the country. But this could be for more people, because we've all seen the videos of people waiting 10 to 12 hours in line in Georgia and Virginia and Texas waiting to vote. These people want to be engaged. They want to be a part of the democracy. You've also heard the skepticism, rightly or wrongly, about vote by mail. There are no good reasons to limit any voting options. And so votes can be available to all of these people, but it takes local and state governments to allow that to happen.
That's great, John. Well, thanks very much, and thanks for all of your service and what you're all doing. I want to touch on two kind of notable stories recently pointed at blockchain innovation. And the first one, probably a good segue off of what John said, was a recognition that the United States Postal Service back in August filed a patent application for a blockchain-based voting process. The patent claimed that a combination of the security of the blockchain and the mail service provided a reliable voting system. The votes are stored on the blockchain and attested to by election officials. Obviously, this patent's way too early to be developed and deployed for this presidential election. But tonight, we've already started hearing, and we'll hear more about how the blockchain technology can be used to maybe re-platform voting in the future. A second notable event, I think that was very much incubated with government support and recently kind of hit the media wires, was around events in China. Last week, the government in China carried out a lottery to give a total of 10 million yuan worth of digital currency to its citizens. For the citizens who were lucky enough to receive it, they were able to download a digital wallet and spend the currency at over 3,000 merchants in the district of Shenzhen. Local supermarkets and pharmacies were among the participating merchants, as well as Walmart. The governments around the world are taking significant steps to create a digital ecosystem using blockchain technology. Tonight, we've started to hear about, and we'll hear more about what's occurring at the state and local level to innovate with similar technologies. So, gentlemen, given those fairly recent events, what do each of you see happening on the national, state, and local level to educate, advance, and deploy this technology? This time, Ian, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nate. So, yeah, this is a very intriguing, opportune time, I think, in the world, given everyone's perceptions on government and the perceptions on politics generally, in ways that we can potentially increase access to participation without the fear of corruption, right, in that process. And so, obviously, voting, and John's sitting right with us, and he'll go much more into that, but voting is probably the number one thing to look at with on local government applications. And I think, it's important that these things happen from a local level because they need test beds. They need to make sure that they function appropriately, and then these processes can be stamped, rinsed, and repeated. There are plenty of opportunities at the local level. There could be applications with trading of titles, whether cars or homes, and homes are sometimes more managed from the county government, but still an application that applies to a local government. Different types of licenses, whether for permitting purposes or for even tracking of animals that you keep in your home. There's plenty of bill paying applications that are appropriate, and I think it definitely needs to be stressed that government is slow, right? Government takes a long time to adopt these things because they require education. Not all people are coming from the private sector or from technologically advanced backgrounds. And so, it takes organizations like the BBA, it takes partnerships with groups like the Mass Technology Collaborative, who have a mandate from the state government to provide not only education, and Pat will go into that, and we've been working together on helping Quincy specifically as a municipality understand more about blockchain applications, and then finding that place in the middle. And it takes champions too, right? It takes people who have familiarity with technology, who have access and relationships to move and advance different types of projects and applications. And so, I think that there's plenty going on, but it takes a particular recipe and a coordinated effort to actually implement and make these things happen.
I appreciate those insights, Ian. What do you think, John?
Well, I agree with Ian on many of the things you just said, including the idea that this can be used largely at the local level. But I also think, particularly within the election space, the national level needs to lead. We need standardization and certification for mobile voting. The Elections Assistance Commission and Congress need to come together to establish these types of things. Through the blockchain, we can audit elections and we participated in and restore trust in the vote. There have been countless stories this year about the trust in our elections. Was my vote received? Was it counted? Did I actually participate the way I thought I participated? Votes has publicly advocated for standard certifications, and we will continue to do so. We've held public audits for the elections that we've held. So it is crucial to ensure the authenticity of all the elections. They've been called into question far too many times this year, and it hasn't even happened yet.
Good point. Pat?
Yeah, no, I think that the two developments that you cite, along with a number of other ones, really serve the purpose of creating some real awareness around what blockchain can mean in different segments. Because as Ian suggested, a lot of your purchasers and your buyers, they don't have a reference point for what blockchain is, how it differentiates itself from other systems. And so I really think that what we're going to see in the near term is not only increased awareness, but a real effort toward education around what this can mean. So success in the marketplace is a real proof point toward that. We actually have been working very closely with the Boston Blockchain Association on that very point. We have sponsored an education series, mainly for municipal officials, because from our perspective, municipalities are more nimble and have real pain points that blockchain can offer a solution to. And so we have gone through, we've had 4 sessions now where we've tried to really educate the fundamentals around what these technologies offer and explored some of the use cases. I think some of them that officials found most interesting were the ability to streamline permitting, if you will, in a municipality. Anything that creates efficiencies, cuts costs, improves security. These are things that municipal officials not only have an interest in, but are nimble enough to be able to make a difference on. So I think education is really going to be the watchword for a while until we get as a real input to some key functioning markets to get some products out there.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Nate, if I could add one comment.
Absolutely, Ian.
But it also, in addition to what Pat stated, it's going to take coordination, right? There are things happening at the state level through legislation Cynthia Cream, state senator, and a couple of other colleagues of hers have filed legislation to look at the feasibility of a number of applications in state government. Right in our own backyard right here, over the summer, we had Congressman Stephen Lynch, who represents the 8th Congressional District. He's our congressperson here. He's the head of the Fintech task force in Congress and has been looking at various applications of blockchain, including to manage the strategic stockpile for personal protective equipment during the pandemic. So, you know, it takes a coordinated effort to get all these people who are near by, who all of us in this call have relationships in order to move this process forward also. Sure.
Well, I appreciate you bringing us back to Massachusetts, because my next question is, look, the promise of blockchain is real, but is it easy to realize? Based on your experiences, you know, whether it be in technology or in other sectors, what have been the best practices that we should embrace to make Massachusetts the global leader in the areas of Govtech and Civtech? And maybe, if you will, what role can government play in that process? Pat, I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah, no, you know, this goes back to a pretty tried and true playbook that's been activated in other sectors. I think it's about collaboration. It's about working together. It's about taking the experts in academia, the researchers, the industry that are trying to stimulate some growth, really looking at what your strengths are here in the state, understanding where the gaps might be, and working with strategies collectively to see if there's things that we can do as a sector and as a Commonwealth to try to assert global leadership for blockchain here in Massachusetts.
Thanks, Pat. Ian?
Sure, yeah. Here's what we're doing. We're waving the flag from here. We're putting something in the ground, and we're saying, you know, not only are we focused on blockchain and Fintech, but we're focused on Govtech and Civtech. It's because we come from personal and professional backgrounds that you know, allow us to move these things forward. We have a direct relationship right now with a municipality, that's the city of Quincy, who is open to being a test bed for technologies that make sense to move forward. You know, we currently at QUBIC, we obviously, back in March, we were ready to welcome in a whole host of companies, and then the world changed overnight. And so our start time really just began over the last month, and we just welcomed about 5 companies in. We got about 15 people here now who are leading the charge for us. We've got one blockchain company called BZ. I don't know if my friend from BZ's out there tonight, but you know, we're getting it started. We're actually doing it, and so we you know, one of the things that we're focused on is stimulating that activity through the support investment dollars, grant money. And so we plan to launch a 150K challenge over the next few months, most likely at the beginning of the year. We were very fortunate at the beginning of the summer to have an unsolicited commitment that seeded that challenge from Castle Island Ventures, who I'm sure this community knows very well. We recently received commitments from Nutter, McLennan & Fish, the law firm, and we just secured some CDBG money from HUD, and that will enable us. That's gotten us over the halfway mark for that fundraise, and so we're looking forward to announcing that formal competition at the new year, where we can really put ourselves out there to enable entrepreneurs and startups to have some capital and put their ideas to work, but also to give them avenues to test and to proliferate those technologies within municipal government.
That's a lot of stuff. Incredible. John, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Thanks for the opportunity. It's about education from our perspective. People, and by extension, government officials, policymakers, regulators, decision makers, they need to be educated. They need to know what blockchain is, why does it exist, or how does it exist. They need to know what it can do. If they don't know about it, they're not going to use it. And if they don't trust it, they're not going to use it. There's been a lot of misinformation about blockchain in the electoral space. Mass needs to be able to fund pilots so the fear of the unknown can be conquered. So we've been such a leader in so many things over our 250-year history, from the development of a democracy to microcomputing on the 128 high-tech corridor in the 80s to the biotech boom of today. Voting should be added to that list. But we need to educate the decision makers and, by and large, the public, so they know how to use it and they know not to fear it.
Fair enough. Thanks so much, John. So another point of recognition, right? Government has seeded the clouds of innovation before. Significant innovation often needs government's assistance to start and grow. An example I think about is Tesla. That's a company that has reshaped the auto industry. And it has done it with the help of government, subsidies at the national and state level, federal tax cuts for consumers buying electric cars, even new fuel efficiency standards. How have the three of you seen government play a role more locally to transform state, city, town, and businesses in Massachusetts? John, let's go back to you.
Happily. Thanks. We want to further the ideas of the Smart Cities initiative and bring voting to smart cities as well. Even with high-profile elections like we're going to see in less than 3 weeks, turnout barely tops 50% nationwide. And for local elections, it's also equally dismal. It's really just plain sad. Last year, the citywide elections in Boston last November, there were very competitive city council races, and turnout barely topped 11%. I think it was 11.3%. More voting options that make it more accessible and convenient will increase turnout. You can't have a smart city without an engaged populace, and that will help. That will certainly help it. Military voting hovers around 7%, which is really abysmal, since we're talking about the soldiers who keep us safe. They're away from home fighting for our freedoms. The DoD estimates that if electronic voting were allowed, that 7% number would turn into 38%. That's millions of more people voting. Of course, what really is needed is a change in thinking that will allow standards and certifications to be established, a change in funding that will allow more pilot programs to be launched, and more people will be exposed to this, and the fear will diminish, and the demand will increase. And that'll also increase that'll increase turnout and engagement.
Thanks a lot, John. Pat, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that the state has to step up and be a good partner with the sector itself to really get the flywheel going on blockchain. That means things like exercising its convening authority to bring folks around the table to look at the opportunities in the state, get the regulatory environment right, and try to do some leadership on that front. I think the notion of subsidies is something that more often than not is driven by federal policies. Few states have the ability to subsidize the growth of specific industries. There's a few examples. We see that in clean energy, but they had a very dedicated funding source, which came through what we call the systems benefits charge that people pay on their electricity bill. I think the state can be more active in what I call demonstration projects to see if there's ways in which they can move the needle on technologies and enabling technologies for new products and services. And the state does have a number of programs that are available on the talent side, company financing, and the like. And so there's lots of ways in which the state can be a good partner. It really is driven by the leadership and the commitment that the sector itself takes. Being able to articulate what are those key interventions that the state can do to really make a difference on the fortunes of a sector. Those sectors that have done that, and we see that happening now in the fintech space more broadly. We've seen that in life sciences, in clean energies, I've said. And I think that we've got a good start on blockchain. There's been a real tremendous amount of organization within the sector, meetup groups, university-based initiatives that have been great. Now with the formation of the Boston Blockchain Association, we have the administration having identified blockchain as a key growth opportunity sector for the state. And lastly, there is a legislation pending in the legislature now for a economic development bill that has proposed an innovation and technology fund for the state that could be a tool to do these kinds of demonstration work under the right conditions for a technology like blockchain over time. That was introduced by the Baker-Polito administration. Both the House and the Senate has embraced that notion with their own versions. And so it's in what I call the COVID-19 pause, where people are just trying to wait until we see the bottom on things and really get back into a more proactive role.
Wow. Fair. Again, lots of stuff going on. Thanks so much, Pat. Ian, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I think a lot about access, and from my experience in the local government, I've learned a lot at the local government level because I just think it's so interactive. It's your neighbors, it's people you've known. If you live in a town that like I have for most of my life, and so I just see the opportunity to make such influential impacts on the local level. And so one initiative that we're working on here, which really is about economic development, it's about bridging the digital divide. It's developing a municipally owned fiber network. And so right now in Quincy, we only have access to Comcast for internet. And so, not only does that provide with variability of quality of service and broadband capacity, but it's, the fees are high. So that's one of the things I've heard for years about, it's sort of a complaint from constituents. And I said, I've seen other cities and towns look at this model where we build the infrastructure, the city will own it, allow for ISPs to come in and play off that line. Ideally, it drives down the cost, improves the quality. And if you add a dynamic open access layer that sort of manages the ISPs that play and compete for your business, it allows for many different opportunities for companies to play and to really strengthen. So, it's about creating greater access, bridging that digital divide, and making sure that businesses can truly succeed in this, digital economy.
Well, we're not going to be able to create a digital economy without broadband. So it sounds like that's a fundamental component of work that needs to be done. So best of luck continuing that. So I've learned a lot here from you three. I feel like I'm a more informed citizen at this point, and I hope others who have joined tonight do. And it actually looks like you may be in QUBIC Labs at this moment. In fact, are you there?
I may be at QUBIC Labs right now.
Yeah, undisclosed location is.
Well,
I'm in the bunker.
Yeah, well, we haven't done anything like this before in our virtual meetups, but given what you're doing in the heart of Quincy, creating literally this Quincy Business Innovation Center, or QUBIC Labs, and you are incubating new technology through startup businesses and reframing that city. Would you be able to give us a tour of your space and show us kind of what you're doing to help these companies get off the ground?
I'd be happy to. Just as long as we can call this either the BBA or QUBIC Cribs. Welcome.
Official title.
Yeah. I'll try to keep in front so you can follow along. I'm operating right now from one of our conference rooms. So just to give you an idea of our space, we've got 14,000 square feet of office space. We're we're right in the heart of downtown Quincy Center. We are literally a stone's throw from the Quincy Center T station on the Red Line. So access to all major highways, not to mention public transportation, is very easy. We have 2 floors between the 14,000 square feet. We're right now on the first floor, which is much more public facing. And please bear with me, we're still programming the space as we go along, and we're just getting our humble beginnings. But this is a kitchen space over here. We have off there a multi-purpose room that we are currently in the process of applying for grant development money, which would allow us to turn this into AV accessible equipment. We have another space back here that's reserved for a co-working environment. As we walk down this hall, which is so nicely decorated by an artist that goes by the name of Brandalism. Down the end, we have a project room here, which is currently occupied, but there is AV equipment in here. And people, Nate, you were there a couple weeks ago with Mike. You've seen that room. It's a nice space. I will ad-lib as we walk down the hall, and I take you down the stairs to where new magic is happening. You guys have never done this before? Can't imagine why you haven't.
This is a first, but I think we're going to try to replicate this.
Yeah. We have parking in the back, also important, also accessible street parking. Starbucks directly across the street, also a local coffee place called Gunther Tooties. They make great sandwiches. Bagel section. This is part of the working environment here. We've got some heads down space in the back where some folks have been situating themselves. And then we walk down here. We have a lot of open space and tables, which we are COVIDizing with some partitions that are on the way. And we actually still have on the other side of this, so this is the front entryway, which will take you to the elevators and a main hallway.
Ian, did I hear there was a actual vault, like maybe
there is
a blockchain secure vault in your facility?
So we have an unprogrammed 3,000 square feet on this side. One of our tenants has set up some filming capability down here. So I actually could have done a green screen and lights tonight, but real thing. So this is actually a vault. So this used to be, I think, a city mutual bank, but the vault remains. These things are welded, so you can't get locked in.
Maybe you can make it a nap room.
And you can make it a nap room or a place to have quiet conversations. So again, this is part of that 3,000 square feet that we're still programming. We've got extra kitchen space down here as well.
Well, Ian, that's great. That is true home of innovation right there in the center of Quincy. I'm starting to wonder whether the BBA maybe could set up operation from the vault. Maybe that's something we could talk about after tonight's event.
Oh, we'd love to. We'd love to have them.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Ian. And just one more time, you've got 5 companies that you're bringing in. It looks like you got enough space to host many others.
We do, yeah. So, one of the cornerstones that we're trying to carve out, because we would like to be a differentiator in the marketplace, is blockchain. And so, that's one area that we think would, provide us a unique opportunity to make a special place for groups that are focused. And, as I said, we've got the universe of investor relationships and municipal relationships and advisor relationships that we're currently in the process of building so that we can be as supportive as possible to entrepreneurs and their businesses.
Well, that's great. We're going to give you a little bit of a breather here. You just kind of sprinted us through your space. Thank you so much. It's great to see. Why don't we move to some question and answers? There is a question from the audience. Sounds like we need to drive blockchain development through serving public interests like voting and economic development as outlined by Ian and Pat. Should we combine this with finance and focus on accessibility to all financial services? I'm going to serve that up. Any of you who want to take that one, please do.
Nate,
Pat in the first. Go ahead, Pat. You go first.
No, is that a technology play that's being inquired about? A way to process financial transactions?
So should we combine with this, the development around blockchain for voting and economic development, a focus on finance, and a focus on providing accessibility to financial services to all?
Yeah. Well, let me answer it this way. One of the things that's important around any sector is to really identify those applications that are going to give it some traction. And there's no question that financial services is probably the application category that offers the most promise for some real demonstrated results and an ability to demonstrate what blockchain can offer. So, my sense is we're in the right spot. I don't quite understand the relationship between the question and the civic, our theme here, but I do think financial services is a cornerstone for blockchain.
Thanks, Pat. Ian or John, do you want to comment on that? If not, we've got a number of other questions I can pose.
No, I just heard the civic aspect.
Sorry,
go ahead,
John,
Ian.
go.
Okay, I was just going to say I heard the civic aspect of it and talked about accessibility. Of just trying to make, again, I'm being a one-trick pony here tonight with voting, but the accessibility of voting is exactly what we're after, making it available and convenient. We talk about the disenfranchised voters that we're working with now, but trying to make it convenient and to increase civic activity through all populations.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah,
did
and
you
the
want
only
to
thing,
comment?
yeah, the only thing I was going to say is I agree with everything that everyone just said. But I think the less you make it complicated, the easier it'll be to adopt, right? And so if there are individual applications, as alluded to, I'm sure there are great applications for increasing. If we're talking access to financial services or bankability, that certainly makes sense from an accessibility standpoint. But if we're talking about working with government and applying particular use cases, then keep it simple.
Thank you. So the next question, I think, John, is probably squarely going to go toward you, but
Sure.
obviously, if others want to comment, please do. So the question is, how is Votes fielding questions from local and state election representatives in response to the issues present in the current mail-in ballot crisis?
Well, Votes supports mail-in balloting, as well as Votes is, well, I'll go backwards a little bit. Votes is looking to increase options for people voting. So we're not against the mail-in balloting. We're not against in-person balloting. We understand there's limitations with mail. We understand there's limits because of the pandemic. There's limitations with in-person balloting. But no, mail-in balloting, we're not against that whatsoever.
Fair enough. Pat or Ian, are you okay? We can move to another question if you're good.
I'm ready to move on.
Fair enough. Here's another one. Are there other states that have created drivers to make a difference in blockchain? Do you know other states that are kind of doing this?
I think not. I don't know of any that have wrapped themselves specifically around blockchain. Mm-hmm. I do know of a number of states that are doing a lot of work in Fintech, which have a blockchain component to it. Okay. And I will say that, in terms of other states that have a claim on the competitiveness of the sector, it's our typical competitors. It's Silicon Valley and New York City. Mm-hmm. But I still think even in under that competition, I think that Massachusetts, with the work that's going on in our universities, particularly out in UMass Amherst, which people don't think of oftentimes on the Boston end of the state, but that along with a number of activities going on at MIT, Harvard, Northeastern, Boston University, the educational curriculums that are coming to bear through schools like Babson and others, we have opportunities to be real first movers in this space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I would say that we absolutely do. And in a probably company related field, I think one of the states that has been doing a lot of work, especially around creating a legal framework, is Wyoming. And Wyoming has been trying to become like the Delaware for corporations for blockchain. Yeah. And I can't list you the laws that they've enabled, but I just know that they've been making considerable headway there.
Yeah. I will mention that Rhode Island has had ambitions. They've put out an RFP to try to attract blockchain solutions that's had kind of limited success. Wyoming has its own blockchain sandbox. You'll find a lot of these states that don't have the real assets necessary to build an ecosystem will oftentimes try to do something extra like that. So Wyoming does have a blockchain sandbox.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
My understanding is Utah as well has embraced it to an extent for governmental services, including marriage licenses and some voting pilots that we've done out there.
That's great. Well, thank you for that. Here's a rather specific one, but I think it's interesting, just kind of given the leading edge technology topics we're talking about. John, could you speak in particular kind of about work that you may be doing around biometrics to improve the security of the voting process on mobile phones?
Sure. I can't speak specifically to the tech backside of it, but biometrics is an important part of the authentication process when you do vote using our app. Our app is designed to make sure that you take a selfie to authenticate that you are who you are when you're using the system and verify who you are. So it's definitely, I can't speak to the tech behind it, but definitely it's a huge part of what we do.
Great, thank you. I mean, we've not too long ago we had some meetups focused around digital identities, and this folds right into that. So appreciate your comments there. Let's see. Maybe building off of that, one more question from the audience. What would you three consider to be must-have attributes for a secure voting system? John, this one probably hits again closest to home to you. Do you want to take that one? And
Sure.
Pat, Ian, if you want to jump on, feel free.
Sure. Ian's a real-life politician here too, so I'm sure he'll want to jump in as well. But authentication, verification, and auditability for all of that, to make sure that your vote is counted, to make sure that we restore the trust in the elections. I think those are the three most important things that we need to focus on.
Public employees do not like to speak about voting procedures. So, but setting that aside, you know, I do think that the key is that it's there's a consensus amongst the body politic. You know, so the policymakers need to make a decision, and that is driven through its population.
And what do you think?
I think I think it's exhausting how politicized everything is becoming, including this. And so, I mean, the only thing I would say is legitimacy.
Great. All right, let's go to one more question, and then we will move to the breakout sessions, and we can have just kind of more informal dialogue and conversation. And so what you should see shortly, if it hasn't been posted already, are links to these breakout sessions. You can choose who you want to sit down and talk with. Do you want to go to Ian's room, John's room, or Pat's room? Pick one, go. We will continue the conversation, and we will have representatives from the Boston Blockchain Association there to help administer the conversation further. So I guess the last question is, what kind of education is available within the government to bring government employees up to speed in blockchain and other key leading edge technologies? Pat, you spoke about this a little bit, but could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we're in inning one around educating state and federal officials around the attributes of blockchain. We started with municipalities because of the reasons we discussed. They're much better positioned to make a purchase decision than the larger agencies are, which have a lot of review processes. It's not just endemic to blockchain, but in any new technology that the public sector is going to look at, you know, there's a lot of, you know, risk aversion to being the first ones to be making a decision like that. That's why I think that moving into demonstration projects where people understand that this is the ability to test and evaluate and bring people along, I think that is the best way to create a tool for education around blockchain.
Thanks, Pat. And John, I mean, you've had some interesting engagement with the government itself, right? Maybe from your perspective, how could government help, you know, incubate and further adopt the voting process that you've kind of alluded to tonight?
Well, I think it goes back to exactly what Pat was saying. It's about education. Long before I started at Votes, back in the early internet days, in 2002, I was a state employee for 1 year. I was a deputy treasurer when Shannon O'Brien was the treasurer of the Commonwealth. And I saw then how slowly the entire process moves. And I also appreciated that you're talking a population of bureaucrats who some are very, very tech savvy. The vast majority are not. And it takes a long time to sort of roll that log up the hill. And I think patience and understanding, but also understanding that technology, Massachusetts is such a technological hub that it's inevitable that it's moving in our direction, and that even though we have to be patient, we have to expect that it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Nate, I want to make sure that I parse this enough to give folks a kind of a better prism into it. Government is a marketplace in the same way any other marketplace you're going to be approaching. And that's how you have to think about them. You can't think about government as the entity that's going to be first adopter simply because it's a good thing to do. They are a marketplace, and there's a real challenge upon the community to articulate the value proposition. There are people in state government who are capable of being an early adopter and being the champions of a new technology if that value proposition is made. And I look at all these agencies. Department of Transportation has an innovation office, all of these, and they have very acute problems that they need to address that blockchain can be a unique solution to. And my challenge to the community is government's not going to be the first one to realize that value proposition and take the action because they don't have the capabilities within those walls to understand what that is. But if you as a member of the community have a solution or, and can articulate that value proposition on all the dimensions you would take it to other sectors on cost, reliability, security, then there's great opportunities in state government.
I appreciate those insights very much, Pat. Like I said, I literally am learning through this conversation tonight myself, and I'm sure others are as well. So I appreciate all that. Ian, anything you'd like to add into that specific topic?
I mean, that was a powerful statement. I couldn't agree more. I appreciate Pat's perspective because, yeah, I liken that what Pat just said to you've probably sold to a Walmart or a Target, and if you haven't, they have crazy procurement processes, and it's a long sales cycle. And so, I agree. I look at government sales cycles in the same way. You need your champions, you need your key decision makers, and sort of understanding the value chain of the sales stack is integral. But it is particular to different parts of government who have their own needs and wants sometimes too.
Yeah, yeah. And remember, you're selling a solution. You're not selling a technology.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We've got an interesting pilot going with folks over at BU called Privacy Preserving Multi-Party Computational Platform. It's got a blockchain component to it. This is a methodology that will allow folks to have private data analyzed without taking custody of the data, which preserves the confidential information on it. That's a solution that we would be offering if it got any traction with a blockchain component in it. And so it's hard work. This is not a top down where someone's going to say, oh, blockchain's the future and let's cobble up some resources and just go see what we can do with it. State governments don't have that today. Mm-hmm. What it is about solutions for those entities in the same way you bring it to all the other markets.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much. So I've definitely appreciated the open dialogue from a government perspective, new business perspective, innovation perspective. I literally think it's conversations like this that are incredibly constructive, and it's how we are going to get things done. So maybe in closing, if we just run around the horn one more time with just closing thoughts. Please share anything that you think is appropriate, whether it's pathways to break down barriers, what we should be doing to further collaborate in a similar manner to how we've collaborated tonight. Ian, if it's a startup company trying to figure out how to contact you to get a table at QUBIC Labs, maybe the best way to reach out. I'm sure it's a website or something like that. But let's go around the horn one last time here before we head to the breakout rooms. And John, why don't we start with you? Great.
Again, thank you so much, Nate. I really appreciate the opportunity to join the panel tonight, and thanks to my fellow panelists, Pat and Ian, to the Boston Blockchain Association as well, and to everybody who logged in. It's about education and access, educating public officials, and by extension, the public, about blockchain, the abilities of blockchain, and really dismissing the fear of it. And then access vis-a-vis voting, breaking down barriers to the polls so people can be more civically engaged. We have an election in less than now 3 weeks under the umbrella of a global pandemic. It's going to be an election like we've never seen before. Votes is involved right now. We're running 3 pilots out west where people, as we speak, are now voting for president for the first time in the history of this country using a mobile app, which is really wonderful and exciting. And by the time the next presidential election runs around in 4 years, hopefully there'll be thousands, if not millions more doing the same. So it's really an exciting time, and you guys are at the forefront of it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thanks.
Well, thank you, John. Ian?
Sure. Yeah, Nate, thank you very much for this conversation tonight. We've had a chance to talk personally for a while, and it's been such a treat connecting with you and the Greater Boston Blockchain Association. I'm grateful for Mike Wise and John Hargrave and Eric Groove, who respectively from their corners just bring such unique perspective and insight. And so, we sit at this place where we're trying to create momentum, and we are we feel like we're the sort of, executors. We're the ones just trying to get things done. We've got a space here that we are trying to help people grow. We obviously have a particular interest in Quincy and in the region. We hope that people, wherever they live, can identify that a different regional approach might now be more appropriate than the traditional methods of working in the downtown of Boston, and that regionalization might be more convenient. Working with people with a particular focus like we are would hopefully be effective, and that we come with this position of having the relationships in government. We come with having our investor relationships, and we hope to put this recipe together in order to create a real hub for Boston to exist as to have a global hub for blockchain on the map. And so, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk more. Website up at QUBIC Labs, QUBIC labs.com. You can feel free to reach out to me, Ian at QUBIC Labs, IAN. And from either an advisor perspective, if you feel like getting involved with any of the companies that we will work with, from sponsorship perspective, of course, we're always welcome to have those conversations. And if you've got a startup or concept that you seek to advance, we're here for you. So thanks again to the crew.
Well, thank you, Ian. Pat?
Yes, Nate, thank you. All your colleagues at the BBA. Thank my colleagues on the panel here. I look at blockchain, and I look at where we are today, and I feel it's an exciting time. We all live in an era, unlike generations before us, where we have witnessed in our lifetime the cycling of new and emerging technologies and what that's about. I mean, there was a time where all of us had no idea what the internet was and had no vision for what that could mean. And I think most of our society is sitting there today with regard to blockchain. What impact is this going to have on our lives and on our economy? And the answers, just like in the internet and other key technologies, are going to be driven by the people closest to it, the people that are creating the inventions, the innovations, understanding where the new applications are, understanding what a real differentiator can be in the marketplace. So we're just pleased to be a part of it at the Mass Tech Collaborative. We don't pretend to be the central planning authority on anything. We respond to what the energy and the excitement and the passion that comes from our marketplace. And our marketplace is the ecosystem, the people that are taking the risk, making the investment, the researchers. And so thank you for having us. And we look forward to continuing on this journey and hope that we catch the prize of Massachusetts being the global leader for blockchain technologies on the globe.
That's very exciting, Pat. John, Ian, Pat, it's been an honor being part of this conversation with you tonight. Thank you for your partnership, your collaboration, you doing the public good, what you do every day. So thank you so much. We are going to move to our breakout rooms now. For those who have joined, thank you. Again, don't forget the BBA. We appreciate your membership. If you would like to join, we will be able to have more conversations like this and learn together. So thank you. Good evening. And we're going to move over to the breakout rooms. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.